everybody? Welcome back to Best Books Ever. I'm Tyler, and today we are continuing our long journey through Cirque du Freak by Darren Shan. Today we are doing book 8, I believe, Allies of the Night. This one was pretty big. Like I said, once we got past like halfway, not saying that everything before that wasn't good or was slow or something like that, but I think now we're finally hitting where a lot of little things that were setups that, even things that you maybe didn't even know were setups are now starting to fall with a few big ones happening in this book, especially. So let's start with the end, as we always do. So they have 15 minutes to get out of the tunnels and escape. I don't know where they would escape to. Um, it is interesting because, so there's a lot to talk about here, right, with the very end. So first off, if they escape, where are they going? Right, like clearly they would get out of the city. Like there's nothing else for them here. Them sticking around, especially with them understanding the scope of the situation, or at least to what their understanding is. I don't think it would make sense for them to stay here. Although I say that, and RV does have Debbie, so we'll talk a little bit more about Debbie after, but and RV I suppose, but just put that aside for right now. That is something that is happening. So um, then they have Steve. It's like, what do they do with Steve? Like, so, and even the fact that Gannon gave them 15 minutes, like, I don't, like, why wouldn't you just murder them? Like, again, there's a thing of like, oh, but like, don't vampaneze have the same energy that vampires do, where it's like, we will gladly risk our lives. We will give our lives away if it meant the good of the clan. So wouldn't the vampaneze think the same way? Because his whole reasoning was like, oh, I don't want to bury any more brothers and sisters today. But it's like, but if it ends up in you, because like you guys know, I mean, unless Mr. Tiny told them a different story, you know, told the vampires one thing and vampaneze another thing, we know that the vampires have 4 chances. So this is a second chance. This is number 2 of 4. They're now 50% done with their meetings with the Vampaneze Lord. So it's like, and even with that, it's like, they're the only ones that can do it, according to Mr. Tiny, from what he told the vampires. So again, if he told the Vampaneze the same thing, why wouldn't Genin take that risk, even if almost everyone else in this tunnel dies? If the 3 hunters die, Vancha, Darren, and Crepsley, it's 1,000% worth it. So I don't know. It's very. I mean, maybe you can point it towards, Vancha, the brother. He's like, I really don't want to kill Vancha. I really don't want to, maybe there is a little part of him that's like, I seriously don't like it. I know that's our code and everything, but I would rather not risk more Vampanese lives just for the good of the Vampanese clan. Um, it is strange, even the way they were fighting. It's like they're not going for the kill. They were even talking about that, where it's like they were getting cut up for sure, but no one, like, they could have easily. And again, Vancha and Crapsley are very, very talented, very, very skilled, but there's a lot of them. Like numbers mean something. It doesn't matter how good you are at fighting. A 7-to-1 odds, is not good. is very much not in your favor. So there's a lot of weirdness that was happening with the fight that we can't quite explain right now. So there's that. So let's just kind of butterfly off of some of the things I mentioned. RV is back. That was crazy. I'm so interested. I wonder how many people guessed this before the reveal. I guessed it about 2 seconds before the reveal, so I was not like big brain, before all of it, but I didn't know who he was. And then when they were, because Hooky is so interesting because, he has hook for hands, and it's like, that's like, Vampanese don't do that. And then even Vancha was like, that's strange because Vampanese vampires, like, they would rather go without a missing limb than to have an artificial one. Like that doesn't, again, it's the same reason, it's the same sort of logic behind, well, we don't use like guns or anything. Like we do hand to hand for the most part. It's sort of the same sort of circle of like pride and honor or whatever. But then the contact lens thing, the different eye, I was like, ah, so where is he? Like, was he like an insane vampaneze and somehow he was cured? Like, is that where this book is going? Is that there's a cure for it or something? They're gonna harness that? Like what? Um, and then with him being so adamant that like, no, you know me and you did this to me, Darren. Immediately, like again, like probably like 3 sentences before he revealed he was RV, or I guess Darren guessed it, I lost my mind. I was like, oh, the missing hands. Wolfman ate RV's hands. This is RV. So yeah, that was a really cool reveal because I did not expect for a second in a million years, I guess, that we would see RV again. You just kind of assume that he died. Like if you lose your hands, if your hands get cut off, I imagine it wouldn't take very long for the blood loss to kill you. I would guess. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but so yeah, that was crazy. That was crazy to see RV again, and then him be sort of pretty instrumental in getting them to this point. Although could have probably teamed up with any vampaneze, I guess. So, but I thought that was cool. Let's move on to the Debbie stuff for a minute. So overall, him going back and visiting Debbie being old, well, them both being older, but him obviously not looking very much older. That was sort of strange, even with, you can tell that both of them like each other, they want to be together, but it's like, not only is it teacher student, but like, you look like you're 15. Like you're in high school at the very most, and I'm a adult teacher who is out of college, so it's like, it's strange for us to be together, like that's weird. And even with the lie of the aging disease and then with the truth of the vampire, it's like, okay, age-wise, I think age-wise, Darren is actually older than Debbie by a couple years, but it's still like optics, it's weird. And then, it gets into the thing that Crepsley would talk about, a few books ago, where it's like, it's tough. It is very tough for vampires to have lives, to have loved ones, because you age so much slower than them, So like, for a full vampire, if you were to meet someone and you're both 30, vampires age at what, 1/10, right? So in 10 years, that person is going to look 10 years older and you're going to look 1 year older. And then it just gets like exponential, right? So now, 20 years later, that person looks and feels 50 and you look and feel 32. So it's like, it's very, very tough. So even a much shorter case of this, and even to what Darren has, it was an advantage of being a half vampire. He only, ages at 1/5. Even that, even everything sort of being nerfed for him still seems weird. Like, I think as readers, our initial reaction is, yes, they seem to really like each other, seem to really enjoy each other's company, truly care for each other. But then you sort of step outside of it and you're like, I don't think this relationship can happen, unfortunately. If, and we'll get into, a little deeper, especially to where they are now with Debbie and RV and what they're going to do. And we'll get to that in a second. But I just think, if Debbie lives, and cut in real quick, I obviously have read these books. I always try to remind y'all when I have read a book before. That way, I'm not like lying, I guess. I don't remember what happens. Honestly, I don't remember if Debbie lives. Debbie might die. Debbie might not survive next book. I really don't remember. Or she might live. I don't know. But let's say she does live. I don't know. They somehow trick RV or something. They use Steve as a thing. Maybe he does care about Steve more than he's letting on. And I don't know. Whatever. Whatever the case may be. The other vampaneze don't really care about RV all that much. whatever, like, all the pieces fall into place and they're able to get Debbie back, and they kill RV and they leave town. They're like, hey, we gotta leave. We can't stay here. We know what's happening here. There's unfortunately nothing more we can do. Um, you know, we have a quest to be on to save the vampires as a clan, so we are going to contact um, other vampires, a vampire mountain or something, and they're gonna come and deal with this because we literally can't. Um, we gotta move for the greater good and all that stuff. Let's say all that happens. Where does that leave Darren and Debbie? I honestly think they are both going to come to that realization that like this just isn't going to happen. I think in the beginning they're going to want it to happen. They're going to try to be, oh no, maybe you could come with me, or you could, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I think they're both going to realize that this just wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. Like if, I mean, maybe Darren will ludicrously suggest that they blood Debbie. Maybe Debbie is that in love with Darren that she says, "Hey, you should blood me." Obviously Darren. I don't think a half vampire can blood, but if she looks to Crepsley or Vantra or whatever, and is like, "Blood me," and they're like, I don't think you know what you're asking," So, um, again, I love romance and stories. If you've followed me through the other series I've done so far, you'll know that, right? So I love this, but this is not. This wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. And Debbie's cool. Like Debbie, oops, just dropped a piece of paper. Um, Debbie, stayed with all of them. She was able to keep up. She didn't flinch. Like she was just part of a battle. I mean, she didn't really fight, but she was in it. So sucks. Bad times. What else do we have? Oh yeah, and then I guess we'll just get to her with RV. Um, I guess I did kind of forget something. Yeah, so just one more quick thing about the past. Darren did tell. Oh God, hold on. Darren did tell Debbie everything, which was a really nice moment because I don't know if we ever mentioned this. I guess maybe the last time we would have was back in the other book, but back when they were younger. But it's like, will Darren tell Debbie everything? Will he be like, okay, this is what's happening. Please believe me. And he did, and she believed him and everything. So, I like that because I think it could have gone a very different way. I think she could have just thought he was crazy or something happened or whatever. But, I think that was meant to be for him to tell her belief, and I think that even helps their case more. Um, for not being together because like, you know, the more truth that is given, the more weight is added to the situation. And so it's like, this just isn't going to work. Yeah. And then we get to her being taken with RV. Like I guess I don't really have too much to say because I already kind of mentioned it, what could happen. But um, yeah, I mean, the only two situations I see is that RV ends up killing her because he's crazy and because he is a lunatic. Um, and that, I mean, once RV kills Debbie, RV is dead. Like he's gone, and like I guess he doesn't care because like he was even willing to die at the hands of the Wolfman to like prove a point. I don't know. This man's insane. Um, but yeah, I don't know where to go now. I've lost it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess that pretty much catches us up to where we are. I guess the only other thing So I guess two more things. One, quick thing. Paris is dead, unfortunately. Um, he was good character, good vampire. Obviously, the oldest vampire, I believe, right? Right? No. Yes. No. Paris. Who was the? Ah, now I'm getting mixed up. Paris was the vampire prince that died. No, 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 no. Paris was the. Um, Paris was the. I don't even know what it's called. He was Crapsley's mentor, right? Okay, so that was him. Right, right, right. For a second, I thought he was the vampire prince, and if he was the prince, it's like, whoa, Prince is dead. Like, what happens now? Like, where are we get another prince? What's going on? But no, he was okay. Gotcha. I mean, I guess it's still a big deal, obviously, because he was the second oldest vampire known, and so he knew everybody. Everyone respected him. That's why everyone basically went to go pay their respects. And also, he does have a position. I mean, it's not super important now that we're in a war. Like that sort of like. Again, I forget what it's called. It's not like headmaster. It's like I don't know. He just kind of like oversees everything at the mountain, basically. Um, so yeah, sad stuff there. And then we'll get into the last bit, which is Steve. Um, yeah. So this was tough. I'm very interested. Let me know how many of y'all out there didn't trust him for a second, because I didn't. Like the whole time. Again, I did not. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, I guessed it. I guessed that he set him up. Again, I've read this book, so I'm sure there's still like, memories of the book in my subconscious that were, without me knowing it, kind of pushing me towards, what was true and what was a red herring. But it's just tough to believe it that he changed, and it's like I don't know. Crepsley said he's evil, and like we've never had any reason to not believe something that Crepsley said, especially to that magnitude. And I don't know. Again, that again, it's hindsight's 2020 and all that. But even with Hardcat, if you remember what Hardcat said, Hardcat doesn't talk a lot in general, um, but I feel like he is a very good source of information because he is sort of on the outside of everything. Remember what he said when he was like, "It seems like such a coincidence that you got pulled to this town. We got these fake papers. You got enrolled into a school. You're in a very tough spot. And Debbie is not only a teacher at the school, she is your teacher, your English teacher. That seems strange. That seems like there's something going on here." And then Steve is here too, out of everywhere. Like, this town isn't even like a neighboring town to your hometown. At least I don't think. So it's like Steve's here, like that just seems like too much. Like Debbie being in this town makes sense because she, this is where she lived. Her being at the school and him being, her being his teacher specifically, that's where it gets kind of, kind of raise your eyebrow a little bit. But Steve, like, if the whole Debbie thing seemed suspicious, the Steve thing is suspicious times 10. Like, that's crazy for y'all to meet like that. Um, so I don't know. I definitely think our guards were let down as it went on, because it's like there's nothing. He's not doing anything to make us suspect him. Like he's giving information. His story seems solid. To a point where it's like, yeah, he's a character who was very resentful and had a lot of rage as a child, and he grew up and he sort of let it go and he sort of redirected all of it. And it's like that's plausible for a character like him. Yeah, I mean, he helped, he tracked, but now in hindsight, like you said, like him being here, not a coincidence. Him fighting Hookie, forget that Hookie's RV. I don't even care about that, honestly. But the fact that he shot at a vampaneze twice and missed both times, and him being like, "Oh, I don't want to kill him because if we kill him, then we won't be able to track him later and find their like." No, okay, crazy. Um, so yeah, a lot of stuff. But now it gets interesting, right? Because that's everything. So we're gonna get to some sort of predictions here, because I think there is a lot that happened and a lot that could happen going forward because of this. I think Steve being who he is the biggest bomb to drop in this book. And going forward, I already kind of mentioned like crazy scenarios that could happen with RV and Debbie, but with Steve, what do we do with Steve? Right. So right now he's their prisoner. He's their hostage. He is a half vampaneze, which makes a lot of sense. So he trained for this. It's like he's half vampaneze. That's how he's able to keep up. The same way you're half vampire. But we look at Steve and we're like, so what do we do? He's a hostage. Are we gonna kill him? I think everyone would be okay with killing Steve, except for Darren. I think there's Steve setting him up, setting his friends up, and then most importantly, threatening the life of Debbie. Not only verbally, but he had a knife to her throat. I think that all mixes to, you gotta kill him, Darren. But I think there's going to be a little part in the back of his head of like, he was my best friend for years, for my entire childhood. He was my best friend. And I know that he's, Krebsley with the evil blood thing, but I know he's just wrong. Like he doesn't really want to do any of this. It's just there's just dominoes upon dominoes have fallen and he's just gotten here, and like this is unfortunately the hand that he was dealt. And in another world we could patch things up and whatever. So I don't know. I think there's a small chance that if they do talk about what they're gonna do with him, if any, I could see him saying, I don't want to kill him. you know, I could just as easily see him being like, yeah, he needs to die. Like he is still hunting me. I mean, if we let him go, what happens? We can't let him go. What's he gonna do? He's gonna regroup and then he's gonna come hunt us again. Like he tracked us here. He lured us. He didn't track us here. He lured us here for all of this. Plus that was our second meeting with the Vampaneze Lord. Like we're now 0 for 2. We only have 2 more chances. So it's like he would have killed Debbie. Like he would have killed all of us if he could have. So it's like, I think at the end of the day, any of those feelings for him that Darren was hanging on to and trying to vouch for him are gone. Like, you have to kill him. Again, because what's the alternative? You let him go, and he just regroups and continues what he was doing before. Or you make him a prisoner? Like, I don't really know how that's going to work. Are you just going to hang on to him throughout your whole journeys? Like, he's not going to make things, he's literally just going to make every step of every day harder. You have to kill him. There's no other option. Yeah. But other than that, I already kind of mentioned the RV and Debbie stuff, which I think is going to be the more pressing stuff. I mean, I imagine next book is going to continue right where this book left off, which is them trying to escape the tunnels, seeing what happens there, trying to come up with a plan of, like, immediately a plan to find RV and Debbie, get them back, and them also discussing what to do with Steve and also their vampet that they have. And then maybe again, I don't know how much we're going to get through next book, but I'm sure that everything I just mentioned will take up the whole book. There'll probably be us getting to the next legs of our journey as well, because we are, I said this last time, but with every book it becomes more and more true. We are getting to the end. I believe this is book 8. No. Yes. No. Yeah, 8. So we have 9, 10, 11, 12. We got 4 books left after this one. So we are reaching the end. So we will see. We will see what happens. Um, Blooding Debbie would be insane. I don't think that's what's gonna happen. I just think that, but like, if it had, she's like part of the crew now. It's like, oof, that'd be pretty cool. I don't think it's gonna happen though. Yeah, I just don't think Krebsley and Vancha and even Hardcat, like if Darren tries to defend Steve, which is crazy to me, but like I said, I think there could be a little teeny tiny part of him that's like, he's my friend. There's no way, like, Krebsley, and then right under him is Vancha, and then a little under them is Hardcat. None of them are gonna be like, well, hold on, let's just hear Darren out. I think they're gonna be like, no, Darren, he has to die. There's no other alternative. Um, so that is it. Next time, next book, Killers of the Dawn. So we had Allies of the Night, now it's Killers of the Dawn. Kind of opposite there. So yeah, we'll see what that book's all about. Yeah, until next time, read that whole book. We'll get to it. We're nearing the end of the series. Very excited for two reasons. Because one, always excited to get to the end of a series, right? Yes, that's the climax. That's everything culminates together. But also, spending a lot of time on this one. Well, I mean, I think it feels that way just because there's so many books. I think at the end of the day, we're actually not spending more time on this one than some of our other series. But excited to get to something new as well. So those two things kind of coming together is good. So read the book. We'll talk about it. And we'll see how they get out of this one, get Debbie back, and what do they do with Steve.